Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Louise Nayer, author of Poised for Retirement. Louise, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Are you ready to get started?
I'm ready.
All right, question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
Well, this might not be a usual response, but I would say enjoy the process. And I write, some self-help and some memoirs. But for me, it's like running or dancing or doing anything you love. You really get in I call it the zone. Time flies by, and it's so important, I think, as a writer, to remember that you're doing it because you enjoy it and you love it. And the more that you feel that, obviously the more motivated you are, and the more you'll write and the more you'll work and rework it. So I would say a big thing is to enjoy it. You've chosen writing, or writing has chosen you, so it's something that you enjoy doing. Just like a kid playing with crayons or an athlete. So I guess that would be one thing I'd say that maybe isn't a usual thing.
Yeah, well, you have to enjoy it. If you're not enjoying doing your book and writing it, I mean, if it starts to feel like work, then there's really no point in doing it. You should do things that you love. And it comes out when you're writing, when you're passionate about something, it comes out on the screen and on the finished product.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Having that passion, and because it keeps you going. It keeps you finishing it. And that's really important too. You know, if you love what you're doing, you're going to love it and finish it and then get the book out into the world.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
Well, for me, what's been the hardest part over the years is getting the book in the best shape possible. And for all of you who are writers, you know that writing is often rewriting and revising, and there's the copy editing part, which is the grammar and the spelling and all that. But there's also the structure, which I've actually found difficult because I'm not maybe perhaps as much of a linear thinker. So, the words kind of spill out on the page, and then I have to order them. And even when I originally did poetry books, I'd have all these poems in front of me, and then it was, well, what's the theme? How do I put them together without it seeming too obvious? So for me, the hardest part about getting published is getting the book in the best shape possible. And I'd say not sending it out if you're working with an agent or a publishing house too early. You don't want to hold on to the book forever, but on the other hand, you want to think, okay, this is really the best that I can do. And so it's a lot of revision. I haven't actually happened to like revision because it's almost like creating again, but some people find it really hard. So I guess it's just, getting this product, this book, this labor of love into a final project and then letting it go.
And for your books, did you go through the traditional publishing route, or did you publish them yourself?
I actually always had a publisher. So for my poetry books, they were small presses, and then I co-authored a book called How to Bury a Goldfish, and that was through Rodale, and I had an agent for that. So the last three books I've worked with agents, 2 different agents, and traditional publishing, medium-sized presses, not the major big ones, but some really good presses. And actually these days, uh, small presses do, as good of a job, many of them, at getting your book out there as some of the major presses. So that there's a lot to that. So I've worked, very, I guess I would say more traditional. I haven't self-published, but I think it's a wonderful thing, and it gives people lots of options.
Well, and this will transition nicely into our next question, and that's about the marketing strategies. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launches that worked well.
I would say that what worked really well was when Rodale, and I was fortunate that they did this for me, set me up with radio stations. So I had, like our podcast, 10 to 20 minutes on radio stations all over the country, AM and FM. And what was great about that is you can travel. You and your book can travel across country without getting in your car or getting on a plane. And when my book Poised for Retirement came out, I had the same thing, and I actually had a media person, but it was being on all these stations all across the country, meeting different hosts, getting all kinds of different questions. And it was really wonderful because you felt like you were traveling, but you're just, sitting at home, maybe in your sweatshirt and sweatpants with a cup of coffee. And it was really good. And by the way, for those of you who aren't going the traditional publishing route, there are lists of all the AM and FM radio stations all throughout the country. And a lot of times people are looking for authors, so you can reach out yourselves. You don't really have to go through a press.
What would you suggest for people that want to do that? What is the best approach in regards to contacting stations and potentially pitching them?
Well, there was a list, and I can't think of the exact name, but you could look up a city and find the radio station and go online and find perhaps a particular show in that city that sounds like they have authors come on, and then find the name of the host. I mean, it would be research, but it would certainly be well worth it. And there might even be, I wish I had it with me, but there might even be actual lists, maybe radio stations that have authors on them. And you might be able to just find a list like that online. That's something I can check into. But with research, or the other thing is locally, and that's a lot of what I've talked about with students, is that sometimes you'd be really surprised at your local radio station, and there you are, a person living in a particular neighborhood or a city, and you're much more likely to be able to make a direct contact.
Yeah, because it's a great strategy, and it's very similar to, I think, with podcasts as well, where you approach the host and go, hey, this is the value I can bring to the show, this is what I can talk about, and it seems like you can take that same strategy and utilize that with the radio stations as well.
Yeah, exactly, and podcasts are obviously wonderful too. You can do that too. And so some of it is just, sometimes what I've done is just during my week, I'll say, okay, I'm going to take a couple of hours to do some research or to make some calls. So you don't get necessarily overwhelmed by the task. Break it down into small little dips.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about your favorite book. So what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Well, it's interesting because I have so many favorite books. But the one that I picked was a novel, which was Animal Dreams by Barbara Kingsolver. And what I was thinking about when I was thinking about that question is that for me, for a book to really be compelling, I have to care about the character or the person or the memoirist who's writing. I have to really care about what happens to them or the arc of their life. And I felt in that book, I cared about her, what she had gone through. She had lost her mother, and I wanted her by the end of the book to be able to truly love someone else. And so throughout the book, I was rooting for her. So, and I love Kingsolver's characters that way because I find they're really deep and layered. You know, they're not stereotypes. So lately I've been reading a lot of novels because I'm actually working on a novel now too, which is exciting. So I've been drawn to novels. But I think the main thing is that you care. You care about the person who's writing the book. And so I like those little biographical snippets, even in self-help books.
And for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
Well, I found this quote. Again, I have many favorite quotes, but I will read it to you. It's by Gail Caldwell, who wrote a memoir called Let's Take the Long Way Home. And she wrote this. She said, "I know now that we never get over great losses. We absorb them and they carve us into different, often kinder creatures. We tell the story to get them back, to capture the traces of footfalls through the snow." And that quote really spoke to me because I've written, you know, one memoir which had to do with a very difficult event in my childhood. And the book really wanted to be written. And I kept thinking, no, I don't really want to write it. I don't really want to deal with it. But when I finally did, the experience was transformed. And I really believe in the transformative power of writing. And it's not that, you know, people will say, well, now is the experience over. Nothing's ever over, but it transforms and it changes. And writing can do that for you. You know, it can change an experience and you learn from it.
Well, Louise, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
Well, my website is just Louise, Louise, Nayer, N as in Nancy, AYER.com. And you can get me through the website, and my email is louisenayer@gmail.com. So either way.
Well, Louise, I want to thank you once again for being a guest on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.